can the wave surrender to the ocean? If the wave has gone in the wavehood, that means I am Mr. or Mrs. Wave, then you can go in the dream of merging in the ocean. But if there were never Mr. or Mrs. Wave, there was only the ocean waving, consciousness eyeing, then how can this eye surrender to consciousness? And that is what we discussed yesterday. The leap, the merging of whom in what. How can there be a merging? A merging implies two. A leap also implies duality. It looks like a leap for the individual, temporary entity. It's a leap. And you come to the recognition that there was never a leap, because there was never someone falling from the cliff. That was an imagination. And the last one, there's no leap. In Bhakti Marga, surrender is definitely the link, the connection between the creature and the creator, between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. And the Supreme Soul is understood as God. So God has a form, but that form is infinite. That infinite form also assumes forms that can be perceived by us. Sort of human form also, so that communication is possible, guidance is possible. And so that supreme form that we call God, the Saguna, is the highest expression or manifestation of the absolute reality. So the absolute reality, as we many times mention here, has, as it were, for our understanding, at the level of our understanding, an unmanifest aspect, that is the nirguna, where there are no gunas, and then the manifest, the saguna, that which has gunas, otherwise it is not perceivable. But God is that highest form in the manifest or manifestation, the supreme form. And soul and human being is a small form, a tiny form in this cosmic manifestation. So surrender is the bridge, the connection between this tiny creature and that creative power, that supreme person. And when there is understanding that this whole manifestation is only but the unfoldment of divine intelligence, divine creative power, the tiny creature surrenders its own personal life, its his or her own sense of individuality to that high person, the Supreme Person. Sri Ramana Maharshi who had this powerful awakening, complete irreversible awakening at the age of 16, in 1896, July. He came in September, forever, to Arunachala. Never moved from there. Came to the temple, Sri Arunachaleshwar. And he said, Father, I have come at your request. May thy will be done. So, when the individual soul completely abandons itself to the divine person, the sense of separation dissolves. You see, this love, it is true love. You see, this surrendering is true love, the desire of God that will consume all other desires. This bhakti starts in duality. There's me and there's God. But at the end, there won't be any separation. So if you read attentively the writings of the great mystics of love, the mystics of love, you see that it started with a sort of separation. But because the love of God completely consumed all other desires, all other forms of love, there was a unique love embracing their entire life. That separation dissolved. And they enjoyed eventually union. We call it the divine union. Unio divina in Latin language. Mystical union, communion. We are not saying in this Bhakti approach that there is oneness. No, there is duality, but that ultimate duality is transformed in a direct experience of oneness. Though the expression, the formulation of that experience is dualistic. But the direct experience of the soul who merges in the divine being, that is an experience of oneness. So duality is transcended through love. So it is the shift from bhakti to para bhakti, that supreme bhakti, where there is no traces of duality. You see that non-duality is actually the culmination of all path. And this finds its expression in the complete surrender of personal will to divine will. This you find among all great mystics of love, divine love. May thy will be done. Not my will, but thy will. There is no more this sense of personal, individual will. It's a misunderstanding that there is something like a personal, individual will, because the whole manifestation is only but the unfoldment of divine will. And so there is a profound alignment of the individual soul to the divine soul, and a profound acceptance of the unfoldment. The unfoldment cannot be otherwise than what it is. So there is acceptance of what is as it is. In the path of yoga, when we say path of yoga, we mean the Ashtanga yoga as defined by Patanjali 200 years before our era in the Yoga Sutras. In the second limb, the eighth limb, second limb, niyama. It is there. It is there. Ishvara pranidhana. The complete dana, pranidhana. Ishvara, the complete offering to the Lord, Ishvara. So for the student who starts his or her study on the Yoga Sutras, this perhaps looks a little strange, because you see, the Yoga Sutra is very technical. It's very technical. It's a technology that concentration, perfect concentration, leads to perfect meditation, and perfect meditation leads to complete absorption. And that absorption ultimately reaches the Absolute, where the yogi has totally disappeared. It's a technology. Yet, this Ishvara Pranidhana is a requirement. Why? Because if you don't have a devotion to Ishvara, alors Ishvara for you may mean the divine principle or the Lord as per your religious background. And Patanjali also mentions the Om, the sacred syllable Om, as a means of concentration meditation. It means that if you don't have that devotion while practicing this technology, you won't succeed. How can you go from one step into another step? And this is even more true for entering in samadhi. You cannot decide it. You cannot plan it. This is something that is beyond your control. It will happen only by pure grace. By pure grace, you enter in samadhi. You may have been in deep meditation for years, and one fine day, you enter in samadhi. And you know for sure that this is what we call divine grace. It's not due to your practice, your efforts, because you can also go in samadhi without going in deep meditation. It may happen even to the one who is not good in the practice of meditation. He or she cannot concentrate well, yet he or she can go into samadhi in 1 second. How? By grace. So, that complete offering of yourself to, here it stands, Ishvara stands for the Saguna, is needed. So, you see, this devotional aspect is also there. It's not emphasized, but it is also there as a pre-requirement in the Yoga Sutras. All paths are direct, provided you are very sincere, very dedicated. So in the path of Karma Yoga, path of action, karma, action, there is an understanding that I can't do anything on my own. Actually, all this is just one doing, one energy, Huh? I'm not a center of action. I am acted. I am moved. I am done. Huh? So this form is just an instrument of the source. Huh? Does a wave has any control on its arising? Of course not. We know how to explain wave. Huh? It's due to the moon. Huh? It's due to the energy. Huh? It would be a nonsense to say that the wave has full control, has a control room to decide when it rises and when it subsides. It's nonsense, right? So in the same way, it's nonsense to believe that you are the doer. So in the path of Karma Yoga, you see, it's all about giving up a sense of doership, authorship. Huh? Even in the case of a tsunami, we know that this is due to the planet. The tsunami is not the doer of its arising. So there is no here an entity that you can call the doer, the author. So in Karma Yoga, it's all about renouncing the doership, the authorship, and also, when it comes together, the fruits of the action. That means your action has to be devoid of any form of interest, any form of expectation. Because as long as you entertain interest and expectation, you maintain yourself as the entity, as the author, as the doer, as the decider. So it's a great freedom for the practitioner of this path to renounce once and for all the sense of being the author and to entertain any interest, any expectation in the fruits of his or her action. And when you dedicate this action that is performed through this equipment, because that intelligence, that higher power, needs this particular equipment for certain action to be performed, you give up the sense of authorship. This equipment is just the empty instrument of the higher power. So there's a great teaching in the Bhagavad Gita about this part of Karma Yoga. So it is a part that is very practical for those who are in the active life. See, the part of yoga, you need seclusion. You need to sit quietly in a corner alone, with no disturbance. But for the Karma Yoga, any activity is the field of practice. Just give up any personal interest, any expectation for yourself. It's selfish. You can have a noble expectation that will benefit others, for the sake of others and for the sake of God, but no selfish, individualistic expectation. So when you give up the fruits of the action, the selfish agenda, and the sense of authorship, your action becomes divine. this action, selfless action, is that which will finish you. Sri Ramana Maharshi has very much insisted that for those who cannot practice self-inquiry for some reason, because self-inquiry implies some understanding process, to remove all the personal attributes, the story from the I, to reach the pure I, you need understanding. If you are not good at that, then it's said that the path of surrender is also direct. And they are also an excellent duo. So when you practice self-inquiry, you can also do it with the spirit of surrender. It is the same. What is the meaning of surrender? Sharanagati used to do. Prapati, self-abandonment. Sharanagati, taking complete refuge in what? In self. In the self, in your pure presence. So you start also from a sense of I, that I believe I am the person. And it is the sense of I that has to surrender itself to what? To the pure presence, pure awareness, consciousness, which is the source of this I. The I has actually come out of pure presence, pure awareness. I was just an instrument of the unfoldment to process this world of interaction between forms. And the I is the instrument for the sentient forms. The moon doesn't have an I. The sun doesn't have an I. But sentient forms have an I. So that I is no one. So here we come to understand in this process of surrender that there was never someone who could surrender. That I have never ceased to be that pure awareness. There was never someone or something separated from that pure presence, pure awareness. So this whole process of surrendering is an imagination. It's a belief for the beginner. Because I start with a strong belief that I am the seeker, I'm a candidate for self-realization, for liberation. So the I of the candidate, the aspirant, is already, as I mentioned, an advanced I. Because most of I's are in the entertainment, endless entertainment of worldly realities. They are not candidates for final termination, final destination. No, they want the show to carry on. Life after life, they're interested in the show. Sometimes they are happy, sometimes they cry. Even so, they need it, they want it, they desire it. So the I, that is now an aspirant for liberation, is, I would say, an advanced I, a sattvic I. Yet that I that wants to surrender is also who has come to the ultimate last imagination, that I can surrender. How can this I, which does not exist which is not an independent entity, how can that, which is a pure construct, surrender to consciousness? How can the wave surrender to the ocean? If the wave has gone in the wave hood, that means I am Mr. or Mrs. Wave, then you can go in the dream of merging in the ocean. But if there were never Mr. or Mrs. Wave, there was only the ocean waving, consciousness eyeing, then how can this I surrender to consciousness? And that is what we discussed yesterday. The leap, the merging of whom in what. How can there be a merging? A merging implies two. A leap also implies duality. It looks like a leap for the individual, temporary entity. It's a leap. And you come to the recognition that there was never a leap, because there was never someone falling from the cliff. That was an imagination. And the last one, there's no leap. You cannot jump in consciousness. You are consciousness. You can imagine the jump. You see? And that's a good imagination. Stop with all other imaginations, please. So here, in this Sharanagati, taking refuge in what? In the whole. Sharanam, you know, Sharanam. Taking refuge in what? In the whole. In the real. In the real. So I have to renounce to that sense of I and sense of mine, my life. So that attitude of surrendering will shrink the I. See? The individual seeker who felt bound in chains now will shrink, will lose weight, and can slip into the chains. You are free. It's because you thought that you are in bondage that you felt misery. But the moment you realize that you were ever free, where are the chains? So you see that this attitude of surrender is perhaps the essential, central attitude in all paths. It's not just because usually we associate surrender to the path of Bhakti, but it is there in all paths. It is the culmination of all paths. There is no need even to study anything about all this path and go in the comparative study. Surrender is enough. Just acceptance of what is as it is. And the letting go of the sense of I and mine. The letting go of possible personal benefit, personal interest in all your actions. And what happened? You find yourself in your true presence. Your true presence reveals itself, unfolds. It was ever there, but now it is, as it were, revealed to itself. There was a sort of obstacle the layers of the mind that prevents this direct seeing. Acceptance of what is as it is. Sorry for the inconvenience. Inconveniences are deeply regretted. That's a total impersonal statement. No one mean it. We don't mean it. But it's written everywhere. Deeply regretted.